The paintings in my basement change faces while I sleep. The first night I noticed the change, I thought I was just tired. I had only moved into the house a week ago, an old Victorian on the edge of a forgotten cul-de-sac, its windows clouded by years of dust and secrets. It had charm, the kind you only appreciate when you're trying to escape your past. The real estate agent said the basement used to be a gallery. I didn't think much of it, just more room for storage. But on that Thursday night, I went down looking for an old lamp and saw them. 6 large paintings lined the stone wall. All portraits. Each face painted in eerie, muted tones. Men and women, their expressions frozen in hollow-eyed stares. I couldn't remember them being there before. Had I missed them? Maybe I'd been too busy unpacking. That night, as I lay in bed, rain ticked against the windows like fingernails, and I kept thinking of their eyes. So wide. So aware. When I returned to the basement the next morning, don't ask why, I froze halfway down the stairs. One of the women's faces was different. The corner of her mouth, once tightly shut, was now curled into a faint smile. Her eyes, originally cast downward, now seemed to be looking directly at me. I stood there for a long time, breath caught in my throat. Was it my imagination? A trick of the light? Maybe I remembered it wrong. I went back upstairs, trying to laugh it off. But that night, I couldn't sleep. The basement felt like a weight beneath me, pressing through the floorboards. I kept seeing her face behind my eyelids. That half-smile, like she knew something. The next morning, another painting had changed. The man in the middle had closed his eyes. Now I was sure. They were different. Something in that basement was moving when I wasn't watching. And each time I went to sleep, they shifted. They weren't just paintings. They were watching me too. I stayed awake the next night. Not all night, just long enough to prove to myself I wasn't going crazy. At 3:14 a.m., I crept down the stairs barefoot, flashlight in hand. The air grew colder with each step, thick with the scent of old paint, damp stone, and something else, something sweet and rotting. The beam of my flashlight caught their faces. The 6 paintings stood as they always did, each face still in place, at first. But when I stepped closer, I saw her. The woman with the faint smile. She wasn't just smiling now. Her lips were parted, slightly. Her teeth were showing. Sharp. Delicate. Her pupils had dilated in the paint, making the whites of her eyes disappear into shadow. She looked ravenous. And worse, her head had tilted. Not dramatically. Just enough to notice. A tiny slant to the left, like she was listening. I backed up fast, nearly tripping on the last step. That's when I saw it, on the concrete floor beneath her frame. A trail. Faint, greasy smudges like something had dragged its fingers, or claws, across the dust toward the stairs. I ran back to bed and locked my door. But sleep didn't come. I kept staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd hear footsteps. Soft ones. Bare feet on hardwood. Or maybe the rustle of canvas. By morning, the trail on the basement floor had vanished. But the painting, God, the painting. She was closer to the edge of the frame. Like she'd stepped forward just a little. Worse still, the man who had closed his eyes? They were open again. Only now, he was looking up. And blood was painted at the corners of his mouth. These weren't just shifting brushstrokes. They were changing, living, each night while I slept. The basement felt hungrier now. And I was starting to think it wasn't just the paintings that were alive. Something else was waking with them. I made a mistake that night. Instead of avoiding the basement like any sane person would, I brought my phone. I thought maybe if I recorded what happened between midnight and dawn, I'd catch proof. Maybe the paintings shifting, or something walking around down there. Maybe then I'd believe myself. So I placed the phone on a tripod across from the paintings, turned on night vision, and left the basement door open just a crack. At 3 a.m., I lay in bed, staring at the light sliver beneath the door, feeling like the darkness beyond it was breathing. I must have drifted off, because when I woke, it was 5:43 a.m. Heart hammering, I bolted down the stairs. The phone was still standing. Still recording. And all 6 paintings were still. But something was different. My skin went cold before I even pressed play. There was a 7th canvas leaning against the far wall now, where there hadn't been one before. It wasn't framed like the others. It was unfinished, rough and raw and wet with fresh oil strokes. And it looked like me. Not me in a vague, interpretive way. Me, in the clothes I had worn yesterday. My hands at my sides. My mouth open in a silent scream. My eyes empty. I stumbled back and hit the table, nearly knocking the tripod over. Then I played the video. At first, it was just darkness and silence. Then, around the 2:58 mark, a flicker. One by one, the faces in the original paintings turned toward the camera. By 3:07, the woman with the smile was gone. Just an empty black rectangle where her portrait had been. And then, the video glitched. The timestamp skipped ahead to 3:31. And I was in the frame. Not asleep upstairs. Not watching. Not filming. But standing in the basement, facing the canvas, still as death. I was painting something. And then, my head turned, just a little, and I stared directly into the camera. My real body collapsed against the wall. Because I hadn't been in that basement last night. But something wearing my shape had. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, the version of me from the video. The one painting in the dark. The one with my face, but not my soul. By morning, I'd made a decision. I had to destroy the paintings. All of them. I went down with a hammer clutched in one hand and a bottle of lighter fluid in the other. But the moment I crossed the threshold, the air shifted. Heavier. Staler. The kind of air you only find in places that remember suffering. The paintings. They were already waiting. The one that looked like me had moved to the center of the wall. The others had shifted around it like guardians around a queen. And now, every single one of them had their eyes wide open. Even the woman with the smile, whose face had returned, was grinning straight at me, teeth too long for her mouth. I raised the hammer. And that's when I heard it. Whispers. Not from behind me. From the paintings themselves. Tiny voices. Dozens of them. All speaking over each other like they were inside a well, echoing in oil and canvas. One voice rose above the rest. My own. She wants to be remembered. I dropped the hammer. And the portrait of me, the painted girl, smiled. Not just a brushstroke illusion. The corners of her mouth curled up, and her eyes squinted with a giddy hunger. The room felt smaller. Like the walls had pressed inward. My breathing became sharp. Shallow. I backed up until I hit the basement door, and tried the knob. Locked. I never locked it. The lights flickered. And in the flicker, one painting, the girl with blackened eye sockets, was suddenly inches from my face. I screamed. And then the lights came back. All the paintings were in place again. Silent. Watching. I fled up the stairs and slammed the door. But before I could catch my breath, I heard it. From the other side of the door. A brushstroke. Dragging. Wet. Slow. She was painting again. I didn't leave the house. Not because I couldn't, but because I knew it wouldn't matter. She was in the walls now. In the silence. In the corners of mirrors and the pauses between dreams. That night, I slept with the lights on. Door locked. Windows bolted. But it didn't stop her. Sometime after midnight, I woke to the sound of dragging, wet and deliberate, coming from beneath my bed. I froze. Then slowly leaned over the edge. There was nothing. But when I sat up, there was a new painting hanging on the wall across from me. One that hadn't been there before. A girl lying in bed, staring wide-eyed at a painting. My room. My pose. My fear. And in the shadows behind her, something emerged. A silhouette, half human, half brushstroke. Its hand was raised. Its mouth was open. As if it had just whispered something. I tore the painting off the wall, heart hammering, and stormed down to the basement. I didn't care if she was there. I didn't care if the walls bled or the lights died. I needed it to end. But the basement was empty. Every frame was blank. Just empty canvases nailed in rows, rows that went farther than the room should have allowed. Like the basement had stretched itself open. And then, on the far wall, one canvas wasn't blank. It was unfinished. I moved closer. My throat closed. It was me, sleeping. But the face wasn't fully painted yet, only half complete. The eyes were missing. The brush was still lodged in a small glass cup beneath it. Still dripping. Still wet. I turned to run, but behind me, a second canvas had appeared. Then a third. Each one closer to me than the last. Each one showing me in this exact moment. I turned back, only to see the final portrait now finished. My eyes were painted in. Wide. Lifeless. Silent. And beside the painting stood the girl with my face. But this time, she wasn't in the canvas. She was standing beside it. Real. Breathing. Smiling. "Sleep now," she said. "You've painted enough." Then the brush lifted from the cup, and the world turned black.